Alright, in this lesson I'm going to show you about the Find and Replace tool, spell checking tool, and I think that's pretty much it. So, find and replace, which you can use to find and replace or just find words in the doc. So let me take this and expand this out a little bit. I'm not liking how wide it is there. Alright, so the Find and Replace tool is under Edit, which you can just do Control F for Find and Replace. Now, Find and Replace is very useful. You can search in the current document, all open documents, or select a specific file that's not open yet. Or you can search in a folder. So you have a lot of different options. If you're dealing with a ton of files, it's kind of like the Find tool within Windows. If you can't remember the specific document you had something in, you can search all documents in a folder for a specific word. It takes a little longer, but you can do it just like Windows does. Alright, so current document, let's leave that there. Where do you want to search in? Now this is different because you may, if you're dealing with the code itself, you may want to search the code or a specific tag, but this is the most common one, the text itself. Now let's say you wanted to find all instances of the word not, for instance, right? Take the caps lock off. Now we can find the next one like this. You're like, well, where is it, right? Well, you have to move your dialog box out of the way to see it, and it's going to select it, the first one. And you can keep going through the document, and it'll keep finding the next one. Now, you could find all, which is interesting. Let's try this. And what that does is it brings up another window down here where you can see all the nots in the document. Right here. 3 items found, it says, right? So it underlines it and shows you the sentence it's in. Interesting, huh? So let's minimize that results window. Let's go back up to Find and Replace and explore it a little more. Alright. Now here's where we go to the next level. Not just finding words, but replacing them. Now our poem is called If, and the word if is throughout the whole poem, this first one here. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself and when all men doubt you. If. It's full of ifs, right? So I thought this would be a good word to find and replace. And let's replace if. Now it's case sensitive. There's an advantage to this. Later I'll show you. But let's say we want to replace all the ifs with perhaps. Seems like it could grammatically work. So we're given a few different options down here. Now, match whole word. If you don't have this checked, it could find if inside of another word. So let's say we had the word swift, right? S-W-I-F-T in there. Well, it's going to see the if in there if you don't have this. I know. I got to go back to that. But I was just putting it in there just to show you. And it would replace if with perhaps. So, but in certain cases you may want to do that. In this case, we want to just find the word if by itself and replace it with perhaps. So make sure match whole word is selected in this case. Match case. Are we going to look for just words, ifs that begin with capital I or a small I? That's what that's used for. And I don't use these that often, but you can experiment with them. So let's try this. Now we can replace them on an individual basis, just like we had with find, right? So we could go replace, and that's replaced it with perhaps. And it begins wherever you had the cursor. That's when it begins to replace it. So we could do that, and it's going to keep replacing it. Or we can do hit replace all. Let's try that. All right. It has replaced them all. So now all of the ifs are to perhaps. But they're all in lowercase. Now that's interesting, huh? So maybe we wanted them capitalized. Well, let's go back up to Find and Replace. And I think this might prove useful to you. Now we can find all the perhaps, but let's say we wanted all of the perhaps to be capital. So we can replace it with the exact same word, but in a different case. So now, if we replace all the instances of perhaps are now capitalized, which could be useful rather than you going through the whole document. Maybe you wanted to accentuate that word. Let me Control Z, though. I don't want that specifically for this document for some reason. But I do want, perhaps, let's change it to maybe. How's that sound? Like so. Changes the whole mood of the poem, doesn't it? Maybe you can keep your head when all about you doubt you. Maybe you can wait and not be tired of waiting. Boy, it changes the whole concept of the poem, doesn't it? All right. So there's a little bit on the Find and Replace tool, which can be very useful. You can do it with data, too, which is interesting. Now let's do the Spellcheck tool. So let's make sure our cursor's up here, because that's where I want to start spell checking. And it is under Text Spellcheck, or check spelling. Shift F7 is the shortcut. So, because this particular writer used words that aren't common, whoops, I did something I shouldn't have. All right, let's try that again. I Controlled Z to get out of there. I apologize. All right. So you can ignore, you've used a spell checker before, individual instances change as you go. In this case, I'm going to ignore. Continue spell checking. See, it went away from the, I undo too far, and so now we're back to perhaps. So let me go to Find and Replace one more time here, very quickly. And I'm going to replace them all with maybe. Now I'm going to put my cursor up here, go back up to Text, check spelling, ignore, and here's an interesting option, Add to Personal. So let's say you have a word that's not in the dictionary, you could just add it so it won't find that word again. In this case, I'm going to hit Ignore All. It's finished checking the document. Do you want to check from the beginning? Yes, spell check is complete. So it's pretty simple, the spell checking tool. Now, one more thing I want to do before we end this lesson is I thought that this sidebar content over here, let's minimize this so we have some more room to deal with. All right, that looks better. I thought this sidebar content might look better if it was a different color. So let's grab the tag for that. Where did we put it? Let's just grab it from here and change the color right here to black. See, doesn't that look pretty good? That looks pretty slick now. Looks more futuristic and in line with our graphic we inserted up there. And now our table looks even quite interesting. Now you can see where some of those options before into preferences and what color you want the table outline to be, you could modify. In any case, let's hit F12 to preview and see how it looks. Save changes, yes. And allow blocked content, yes. And somehow I ended up with the, see, it's good we previewed because I somehow changed the background of the body back to yellow. So let's go over to body and change it from yellow to that blue that we had. Like so. Now if we hit F4, Okay, that looks much better. All right, so now I'll save the changes, and we're all set. So there is the Find and Replace tool, or just the Find tool, depending on what you're going to use it for, the spell checking tool, and that's it.